Did you know that construction spending in the United States has reached $1.4 trillion? In the last decade, I know firsthand and have seen and witnessed how contractors struggle with cash flow amid rising material costs. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Mobilization Funding, and for the last 10 years, we've been working and helping contractors face their toughest challenges in cash flow. I'm going to give you 3 proven strategies today that are going to help you manage this cash flow amid rising material costs, and give you these 3 strategies that are going to help you organize your business and have a better execution plan in the midst of this current climate. I'm going to start right now with number 1. First, let's talk about how we got to the rising material costs. COVID really put a damper on everything. Moving the supply chain around the country has been a very impactful experience to all projects. It starts right at the top with the developer and comes all the way down through the trades. Look, if we really want to know, this started a long time ago, many decades, when the U.S. tried to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and moved all of our manufacturing and all of our production offshore and overseas. Then, after 2 decades of that, and an economy that was used to low cost, we then had COVID. We can all get into the reasons for COVID. I can share mine on another video. But the impact of the supply chain from COVID is an entirely different animal. All of a sudden, time delays, shipping delays, logistic delays, and then just delays in general, which add cost, increased our cost tremendously. There was less lumber. There was less roofing materials. There was less aggregate to make concrete. That lowered the supply, which increased the cost. There is no denying that. The burden fell primarily on the contractors. If they didn't have the right material costs in play, some of them had to eat it. Some of the GCs had to eat it. Some of the developers and projects had to eat it. All in all, the projects suffered, and somehow it created more and more friction amongst what already is a pretty tough economic climate on a project between subcontractors, general contractors, and owner developers. I'm going to give you 3 strategies today to focus on how you can protect yourself, but also benefit your project, your customers, and overall. Start with strategy number 1. Let's start with strategy number 1, effective project planning and budgeting. Look, we talk about this all the time. If you don't know your numbers, it's going to be incredibly difficult, regardless of the climate, for you to execute and have any plan that's going to give you an outcome that you can predict, but also anticipate and plan for. So first and foremost, you must have a good project cash flow. You have to know what your costs are, including all of your business costs. They must be layered in. I beg and implore our customers and people in our network every single day, no matter what you need to win, no matter what the price is for you to win the project, you have to focus first on what your costs are going to be to execute that project. Because if you have to win the project at $1 million, but it's going to cost you $1.1 million, then you have a business problem. You have to lower your cost of your business in order to compete in the marketplace. And if you can't do that, then you should not be in that specific business, or you need to bid different projects or different types of projects or different size projects. But most importantly, you have to know your costs first so that you can then determine what projects you're going to bid and estimate in order to execute on. So this goes into project cash flows, weekly cash flows, understanding the cash of your business. What is your overhead allocation? How much cost do you have in insurance and fixed expenses that you have to layer into every project? The current expenses that you have in your business, is it built for a $2 million business, or is it built for a $10 million business? Things like that you must know in order for you to be effective. And so a lot of people say, well, how does supply chain have anything to do with my overhead allocation? And this is exactly it. You have to be able to make money, and you have to know what your margins are. If you understand upfront exactly what costs you have going into a project, then you can anticipate what the impact is going to be to any delays or increase in costs. And then you'll know what that's going to do to your business. Look, it's one thing to know your numbers and deal with these problems so you can effectively plan. It's another thing to go into them blind and then all of a sudden get run over by them. And that's what we're trying to avoid with effective planning and budgeting. So build your project cash flows, know exactly where your break-even points are in the project, know how much your labor burden is week by week, where your costs are going to be. If you have $750,000 of costs in a project, on $1 million job, that looks great on paper, but do you have to invest $750,000 into that project before you actually break even, or do you only have to invest $250,000? If your material cost goes up 5%, 10%, do you need to buy that out sooner? If you need to borrow money, what's the cost of that capital? How's it going to impact you? Is it better for you to borrow money so you can buy your material out so it actually is a net effect of zero? All these types of questions are the things that you're going to be able to understand and determine when you properly plan and execute and budget for your project. And then look at that, how that each project will overall impact your business cash flow. All right, we're going to go on to strategy number 2. We've talked on other videos about all the different lending options, so I'll let you go find those videos on our YouTube channel here. But for now, I'm just going to talk about different financing options as they relate to your project. Okay, we started with strategy number 1, knowing your budget, know your project cash flows. Well, strategy number 2, once you understand that and you see where those problems arise or where they could arise, now you have upfront and in advance the ability to decide or determine how much cash you'll need to do the project. And then you can find the proper financing, or you can allocate the right amount of cash that you already have in your business or your business lines of credit or from other projects or profit, such that you know exactly where to use it to help manage your material costs. Because, for example, if lumber costs right now, if you are a framer and lumber costs X today, and it's been moving up at a pace of 3 or 4% every month for the last few months, it's very advantageous for you to purchase that lumber now. Okay, great. Well, that's good. But if you use all of your cash to buy that lumber now and you're not going to be able to invoice for that lumber for 3 or 4 months, you need to know what the cost of carrying that lumber is going to be. And then measure that cost increase against what the measure what the increase in the cost of using your cash today to buy that is against what the cost of the future material will be when you actually get to invoice. And then you reduce these things to a math equation. It becomes very easy. If I borrow the money, this is what it's going to cost me. If I wait to purchase the material, this is what it's going to cost me. And it's easy to see. But it's only easy to see when you properly plan and budget for that. And then once you understand what the cost structure is, you can determine what's the best source of financing. If you have the cash in your business, that's great. It costs you zero. But it does cost you the amount of cash you have. So if you have other projects, you might not have that cash available, and you need to understand that. And that's why each project has its own cash flow that rolls up into your overall business, so you can manage these projects in a singular moment, but you can also look how they layer in overall. Second, financing wise, once you finance that, you want to be able to understand how you're going to build what the financing cost is, the cost of using some cash, what that's going to be in that project, and does it impact the margin. What you wanted to be able to determine is, if you buy those items now, can you do it at a discount? Oftentimes you can buy material today, maybe you pay for it right away, take advantage of an early pay discount, and although it might have cost you an extra 5% or more to order it today, maybe you save 2% by paying for it down. And really the net effect of that is only 3%. And you can look at that across the whole project, and maybe the whole impact of the project is negligible to half a percentage point because the project's very large and the amount of material that you need to buy in advance is very small against the overall project. Those are the types of things you want to know. But it also gives you the ability to make those decisions, know where to go execute them at, which vendors to talk to, which ones you can talk to and which ones you can't, who's going to give you the best deal, not only on price, but sometimes you might want to pay a bigger or a more expensive price, but you might want to for the supplier who gives you better terms. So those are the kind of things you want to know. But from a project cash flow perspective, looking at it in advance will be able to tell you, hey, you know what, I'm way better off paying an extra 10% to this vendor, but they're going to give me these terms that are going to be way better for me. And overall, I could spend 10% less on the material, but you know what? By the time I borrow money, by the time I use all my cash, by the time that impacts my business, it's actually going to cost me way more. Those are the things you're going to actually understand when you have these, when you have your strategy number 1, which is the effective budget and project cash flow. And then as you're layering in strategy number 2, what type of financing and the effectiveness of it. All right, we're going to move on to strategy number 3 now. Strategy number 3 is effective project management. Yes, your team on the ground on the project. There's lots of ways to manage this, but when you're looking at cash and running a construction project and you're worried about rising material costs as well as cost management, your project manager and your project superintendent, the burden lies on them. Their value is in managing these costs and also executing the project. Look, nothing's more important than performance. I'm the first one to tell you that, and that's true. In order to perform, you got to have cash. In order to perform, you have to have labor and material on that job. And in order to do any of those things, your project manager is going to be the one leading that charge. So what can we do with our project managers to help equip them, to help make them have the easiest and best use of the time they're going to be on the project and be most effective? There's a few. First, I think it's critical that your project manager understands the exact budget. If they don't know what the budget of that project is, if they don't know the timeline of the time when you have to order materials, what the costs are, you're going to significantly impair them from being able to make effective decisions. You don't want them to just go down to the supply house and order whenever they want, however they want, just so it's on the project. That's not effective use of your cash. If that has to happen, okay, how can they invoice for that? Is there a method for invoicing for that? For example, can you bill for stored material? Maybe not. Okay, can I bill for stored material? If I put a container on the site, I lock it up, I insure it, I put additional insurance on it for the owner, will the owner let me invoice it then? Yes, they will. Okay, great. Well, what's the cost of the container? Is it worth doing? It probably is. These are the things that your project managers will be able to effectively know. Second, your accounting department, bookkeeper, controller, whoever it is that manages your AP department and your accounting and the overall internal budget of the project, that team of people or person needs to be working with the project manager and meeting with them on a routine basis. So when that project manager is ordering material or they're executing the project, they're communicating what they're doing from a cash perspective to the accounting department. And the accounting department is communicating back to the project manager exactly how they're performing to the budget, what cash is available, what's not. If the accounting department is planning for having several $100,000 in cash to start 2 or 3 other projects, but the project manager on one project decides that they want to pre-buy all the material because they can get a discount right now. On paper, the project manager thinks, sure, let me order this material and get a discount. But then all of a sudden they use up all the cash that was going to be allocated to something else. Now your accounting and business departments have not communicated and created an issue for the business. This is why it is critical for your accounting department and your project managers to be communicating in a routine basis. I suggest weekly, especially if this is something new for you in your business. Get them talking, make sure they all have access to the same information, and they're doing it properly. And the third thing I would add for project managers is align their incentives to exactly what's important to your business. If it's important for that business to perform on a certain timeline with a certain budget to a certain strategy, and you're trying to implement this, align their incentives to it, their compensation. I'm not saying all of their compensation, but maybe it's a bonus. Maybe some portion of their variable compensation is aligned to not just finishing the project, but doing it on a monthly basis and staying in line with the exact cash flow that you built for it and ordering those materials. Maybe it's as simple as meet with accounting every week, give us a report. Just do something to align their incentives around the behaviors that you want them and your accounting team to be best suited for to benefit your project from a cash flow perspective. All right, in conclusion, we've gone through 3 strategies today to help you optimize your cash flow in a rising material cost environment. $1.4 million is spent in the United States on construction spending. There's 3 key strategies. 1, your project budget and project cash flow. 2, optimizing your financing options. And 3, effective project management. We've gone through all 3. Take the tools and information we put together in this video and implement them today. You'll be grateful you did it. It will help you tremendously. Your team will operate better, your projects will perform better, and you'll have a lot easier time managing cash and managing your cash and sleeping at night. If you like this video, please subscribe, share with your friends. I hope it was helpful to you. God bless you.